Jay Richards and I have been joined by Buddy Pilgrim. I think most of you are familiar with the incredible production of chickens that the Pilgrim family has produced, the second largest in the world. Buddy, we're glad to have you here.
Thank you, James. Glad to be
you
here.
were really stirred the other day, even beyond the religious ramifications of this contraception bill and the, really what looked like an all-out assault even on the Catholic Church. And really in some ways, in this sense, we certainly are all Catholics. We need to come together as a family of faith and try to stand for them. But you found it to even be a bigger picture than that. And I'd like you just to share with the viewers, on GBTV, what you felt as a businessman.
Yeah, I will do that, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak on this, because I was deeply concerned about it. When Obama came out with this mandate, I mean, what immediately came to me is that this is far more than just an attack on Catholics. It's far more than just an attack on religion in general. It's an attack on our freedom of everyone. And I kind of drew this analogy. If you considered your yard your religious freedom, maybe the flowers in your yard your Catholic religious freedom, and somebody who's coming to torch your house, and they're trampling on your yard and they're trampling on your flowers, and they make this accommodation, which Obama claims to have made last Friday, well, okay, we won't trample on your yard, we'll go around the sidewalk to torch your house. But we're still going to torch it. And when we get through torching the house, we'll still light the grass on fire and burn the flowers down as well, but we'll do it from the sidewalk. And that's really what has happened here. This accommodation, it's no accommodation at all, but it's far more than just religious liberty. There is no constitutional authority, and Jay, I know you know this as well, for the president or for, even more specifically, the Secretary of Health and Human Services to just come down from on high and mandate that a private insurance company has to provide a free product through a private employer to a private citizen. It's outrageous. If they can tell us this, if we let them get by with this, they will be able to dictate anything they want to us. It is an attack on our individual freedom, and it is an attack on capitalism itself and the free market.
I want you to expound on capitalism. You're a dedicated Christian. You love the Lord. As a matter of fact, you left the business world to a point to really just minister to people and try to help people. I mean, you have a mission heart, and you want to help people, but I find that you also want to help them succeed in their life. And you have a very strong conviction about some of your views from a biblical perspective as it relates to capitalism, because really capitalism is almost like a dirty word today, and we're finding the free market is continually under assault. We're moving rapidly toward what I see as another form of dependence upon some Pharaoh-style government or power, which brought the Israelites into bondage. Even when they turned to a king, they repeated the bondage. Yep. It seems that any time a nation or people look to some other source other than God, they are headed rapidly into bondage and into incredible oppressive debt and lack of prosperity and opportunity. Freedom diminishes, bondage increases, and people find themselves in servitude to some earthly power, and they're no longer walking under divine guidance or in the light of divine direction.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, we're under attack in terms of capitalism in this country. Most people, if you were to ask them to define capitalism, based on how it's presented in the press and how it's presented by liberal politicians today, progressives on the left, they would tell you that capitalism is a system whereby greedy business people take undue advantage of customers who need their product and have no other choice except to buy their product. Well, that's not what free market capitalism is at all. And if you follow this belief that capitalism is people taking undue advantage of someone in need, I could see how you might say it's not a good thing. But the true definition of capitalism, and Jay, I know you know this, you and James both have written about this in Indivisible and written about it quite well. The simple definition of capitalism, and the true definition is, it's the private ownership of the systems of production and distribution of goods and services. Private ownership of business, simply put. Now, what's the antithesis of that? If you say it's evil because of the way it's been characterized falsely, the antithesis of private ownership of business resources is collective or government ownership. And let me tell you, if you think there's going to be an occasional business person who operates in a corrupt manner within a free market system, which there will, men are evil, some business people do evil things, some do great things. But if you think there is a tendency for somebody to be corrupted in a free market, You just wait till you collectively put all the power in the hands of a few politicians, and you'll see corruption like you've never seen in your life before. And that's exactly what we're beginning to see in this country. Crony capitalism is not capitalism at all.
The government can't pick winners and losers, and that's exactly what they're doing. And all of the promises to back up bad decisions is proving fatal almost. Yeah. It's just basically wiping us out. The thing that disturbs me, and you and I are both evangelical Christians, we've got a Catholic here who's got a broken heart for our country. I feel like that the time has come right now for the people of faith who understand faith is important, who understand the importance of family, and family not being a member of a lodge or just some religious institution, or a gang, but really the family, as we understand throughout all of history and, of course, biblically. And then understanding freedom, and freedom being a liberty which requires responsibility, not just license to do whatever we want to do. I believe these people understanding, and it does include the free market, and I've said this many times, every time I've ever talked to Glenn, I don't care whether it's on the radio or I'm here, I point out that the free market can be healthy by not being greed-driven or greed-dependent. It'll always be greed-vulnerable, just like freedom is vulnerable to abuse. That is one of the beauties and yet one of the potential dangers of true freedom. And you cannot substitute liberty with tyranny and expect to have any kind of meaningful life. And yet this is what people are actually doing, buddy. Yeah. And we're being led to do that today, and we're finding ourselves in absolute bondage. It breaks my heart. But the people who understand faith, family, and freedom, they are the only ones who can turn our ship of state back to a correct, safe course. They're the only ones that can do it.
Well, and you keep using the word freedom and free markets, and those are key words to use, because just like the antithesis of capitalism being private ownership, the antithesis of that being collective or government ownership, the antithesis of free market is government control. And we've gotten into this whole system where people believe that wealth in general is bad, it's evil, it's demonized in the press, it's demonized by the left. Companies that make a profit are demonized by the left. You know, Obama even said this a while back. I think it was back in, I looked it up earlier, it was 09, January of 09. Obama said this. He said they have to start acting in a more responsible manner. He's talking about business people. They have to start acting in a more responsible fashion. If we are together going to get this economy rolling, hear what he said? If we're going to get the economy rolling, there will be a time for them to make profits, and there will be a time to get bonuses, but now is not that time. Now, this is January of 09. The country's just coming out of a recession. And in a recession, businesses are closing because they're not making money. They're closing and laying off people because they're losing business, losing money. And he says, now's not the time to make a profit? If when you're trying to recover from a recession is not the time to make a profit, when is, I would ask? And it's fundamentally a misunderstanding of what profit is anyway. Profit in a true free market, and that's why free markets are so important, occurs on both sides of the business transaction. I tell people this all the time when I speak. I buy this suit of clothes that I'm wearing because it's more profitable for me to purchase this suit than to make it myself. I go to the grocery store and buy food because it's more profitable for me to purchase food than to try to grow it. It's more profitable for me to buy a car than to build a car. In other words, in a free market, the only way any company profits, and that's why free markets are so important, not controlled markets by the government. In a free market, Jay, you know this, the only way anyone profits in a free market, you alluded to this a while ago, is providing genuine value to a customer so that that customer voluntarily decides to exchange or do business with those people, that company, and both sides benefit. So when you're creating wealth, it means you're creating value for a customer.
You know, buddy, the problem is a lot of people of faith don't understand this point. It seems so simple, but I mean, if you go and I go get my haircut and I pay $20 for a haircut, I wouldn't do that unless I valued the haircut more than the $20, and the barber wouldn't do the haircut if he didn't value the $20 more than the time it took to give the haircut. It's a win-win exchange. But even a lot of well-meaning people assume that any economy has to be win-lose. So if somebody's made a profit, they've taken money from someone else. And if you think that, you've got that distorted understanding of the free market economy. then you assume that if some people are richer than others, it had to be ill-gotten gain. And so it's why it's so important to understand these basic economic principles, even to be able to think morally about society.
You assume it had to be at the expense of someone else. Let me make sure I cover one other point while I'm thinking about it too. People that are, quote, wealthy. In other words, they've accumulated wealth. Well, that must certainly be at the expense of other people, but I want to tell you the real irony of that. Wealthy people are demonized for being wrapped up in consuming for their own personal benefit. If you've truly accumulated a significant amount of wealth, it's because you've done exactly the opposite of that. Rather than consume for your own benefit, you've taken profits that you've earned in a business transaction, and rather than spend them on something for yourself in consumption, you've reinvested them into a business. And let me give you this one little example. Walmart, the Walton family, which is really the wealthiest family in the United States. They're wealthier than Bill Gates. They just had their wealth divided up among the heirs of Sam Walton. But if you add it together, they're wealthier than Bill Gates. How do they accumulate all this massive wealth? If Sam Walton, when he started that first store, and I don't have any stock in Walmart, I don't have anything to benefit from this, but I'll tell you, they're so demonized they make a good case study here. If Sam Walton had started that first little 5 and dime store downtown Bentonville, and let's say he made a couple of $100,000, $250,000 first year in business, well, we'd demonize him as being evil for making that much money, number one, but let's say he made that much in his first store. If he had consumed all of that on his own family, he would have never invested to build a second store. But he didn't consume all of his profits that first year. He reinvested them and opened a second store, and then a third, and then a fifth, and then a 10th, and then a 100th, and then a 1,000th, and then a 4,000th store. And the only way that wealth has accumulated to where it is today is because every time they made money, they reinvested the money that they made back into the business for the benefit of their employees, their suppliers, and their customers.
Americans are being taught to despise people like that today. Yeah. That breaks my heart. Yeah. They're being taught to despise families like yours that have been successful and provided a product. I think about the Walton family, and I prayed with Sam before he died, and I really got to sense his heart and his spirit, as well as David and Ruth Glass, who was president at the time, and their real legitimate concern and love for just people and wanting the best for them. And the thing that I really recognized is that he had saved people a tremendous amount of money by letting them buy products so much less expensively than they ever would have been. So you talk about helping the people who have less, Jay, and have less money. This great businessman, entrepreneur, made available to so many people things for so much less money. So he did everyone an incredible favor.
He's contributed more wealth to individual families than probably any other country, any other person in the United States.
We're going to take a break. We're going to meet Ritter from one of the greatest churches in Russia, and he can tell you about what socialism does, what really happens when you turn it all over to the state. And we're also going to talk about a book that he has written that is absolutely fabulous, and it actually really leads in many ways into the conversation with Josh Hamilton. It's called Dressed to Kill. Dressed literally to overcome an enemy in the spiritual realm. Glenn Beck refers many, many times to that Ephesians 6 passage that the principalities and powers in the realm of deception and the realm of darkness are the real enemy, and how we have to put on the armor of God. We're going to talk about that. We'll actually talk to Josh Hamilton about what he's learning too right after this. See you in just a moment. Buddy Pilgrim was just talking about, and really, Buddy, we appreciate it, just exactly how the free market capitalism works in such a positive way. It's so meaningful to everyone. They're not the enemy. Ritter has joined us here on the set, Good News Church in Moscow.
Good to see you, Jay.
And you ought to know something about the power of the state and how well socialism works, and just how, well, I mean, you should know firsthand just how dangerous the wealth creators are, because you've seen it firsthand, haven't you?
We have, and I want to say that Russia's in much better shape today than it used to be. Russia is really emerging. But, you know, before the Bolshevik Revolution, the wealthy were demonized. And it resulted in the collectivization of everything, where literally people were required to come in and turn in their hens and their chickens, and they counted their horses, and the state took everything. And it does not work. This experiment has already happened.
Don't you see a crafty, subtle move? We want to say not in that extreme, but don't you see a very dangerous progression right now in America?
I do, James, and I really believe that we can't just deal with this just from a natural perspective. There's a spiritual force at work here. There's so much at stake in the United States. We can talk about the economy, we can talk about every facet of U.S. life, but I live overseas where I see the good that is done by the United States, the good that is done by people of faith in the United States. And if this economy tanks, it's not just going to affect the United States. It will affect the entire world. And so there is so much at stake here. And principalities and powers, which is what I write about in this book, I really believe they are working behind the scenes. And you know, it seems that these spiritual principalities and powers, they don't die. They just move from one region to another. It's the same spirit that was behind socialism in Russia is now trying to operate here. And it just has to be stopped.
But this power has gained a foothold. And the demonization of the successful people, you know, we support your mission work there.
Yes, you do.
And when I say we, that we encompasses a tremendous number of people who watch Life Today television all over the world, look out and see a need and they want to meet it. And I think it's really important for those of you who have come to appreciate what God has led me and Betty and Life Outreach to do in coupling with missionaries around the world. You say, we like to participate in something that works. When you drill water wells in a village, when you feed the hungry, when you rescue people from the sex traffic, when you do something and we know it works, it really thrills us. What I'm seeing happen here is a very sincere desire to say, okay, look, we got serious problems in America. And when we've got the deterioration of the family and marriage, I mean, we've really got a real force opposing the most innocent of all life, to where life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness seems to be threatened at the very source of life itself, where at what point do you not protect life? What's the cutoff point? And we're devaluing life, and as a result, the whole scale comes down where we're devaluing life. But I believe the people, the we that help us with missions, the we right here saying, look, we need to focus on the poor here because what we're doing is failing. We point out in the book Indivisible that President Johnson's war on poverty has proved to be a war on the poor. It hasn't worked, and it won't work. And the way we're going to change it is with compassion and focusing our energy on how do we meet the need. Hands-on, personal communication, close personal oversight. But the people who enable us to do missions have a heart. I think the American people still have that heart. Rick, I still believe the American people would like to correct our course if someone would just point them in the direction. And what Jay and I are trying to do in Indivisible is show that we not only restore faith, family, and freedom, but the people who understand that faith, family, and freedom is important are the only people who can correct the course. They're the only ones who can. Would you agree with that, looking in from the outside? I
do, and while I can do it, I want to say this book is fabulous. You men have done a great job on this book. And just the documentation in the back of the book is worth the whole book. Thank you for this.
Well, we gave people reliable information. We gave them a sound footing to go out and present the truth that transforms culture. You know what I believe about Indivisible? I believe this with all my heart. I really do believe this. You remember when President Obama was elected, he said, you know, when it does happen, you're about to see the transformation of the United States of America. I really do believe that if people grasp the truths in this book, and many other leaders have said that, if you grasp the truths in the book and you apply it and you live it, you're going to see the transformation of the people in the United States, including the Congress and the President. If Mr. Obama grasped these truths, you'd see the transformation of President Obama. Wouldn't that be something? How about the transformation, Jay, of all the Catholics? How about the transformation of all the evangelical Protestants? How about the transformation of all the people all over the world who really begin to live what they say they believe? They really love God, they have faith, they love their family, they love others, they love freedom, and what freedom has given us, we want to share it. This is what I see us looking for. Rick, I believe it can happen. I think you can watch from Moscow and see an awakening here in the United States. That's my hope.
Well, we're having an awakening in Russia. I mean, Russia already came out of this. And this is what I don't understand. Why do we act like this is a new experiment when we can go see where this has already happened? Russia's coming out of this. And today, Russia's having really a great awakening. In fact, Russia's really having its first Reformation. It missed what happened.
And just how important is faith, and just how important is God in that Reformation?
Well, it's very important. And I have to say that it's important in the Orthodox Church, it's important in the Baptist Church, it's important in the Protestant Church. As a whole, it's very important. And people of faith are learning to speak. But you know, you were talking about collectivization and socialization. Just recently, you know, in Russia, Russia's freedom is only 20 years old. 20 years old. I mean, think about a 20-year-old person. That's a very young person. So that's not a lot of time to totally rebuild your infrastructure in your nation. So today we have different things. We have free hospitals, which are superb. We have government hospitals, which are socialistic. I was just in one. My heart broke when I had to walk into that room and see the man lying in that condition. It just broke my heart. And the first thing I thought when I walked into that room was, I wish the cameras were filming this for people in the United States to see. This is what the state does when it's turned over to the state. It just broke my heart. You
have provided us with a book that I want to point out. You can get it on Amazon. You can go to the bookstores. Your website, if people wanted to just see what you're doing there in Russia, what is it?
Renner.org.
Renner.org. That's pretty simple. This is the most beautiful book. Glenn, I wish you were here to see it. This is the most fantastic coffee table book you'll ever see.
Thank you, Chase.
It is absolutely awesome, and it is really the first letters to the churches from Jesus in the Revelation, a light in darkness, and that's what we are asking God to allow us to become as believers, because He told us that we were to be a light that's set up on a lampstand. And then He says this, He says, we are to become a city set on a hill that cannot be hidden. I'm sitting here with a businessman, I'm sitting here with an incredible, in my opinion, academic philosopher and just a great writer who joined with me to write the book Indivisible. By the way, you can pre-order it on Amazon or on all of your online services. It'll be in the bookstores this weekend, and I really pray that you'll get a copy. And those of you who are praying people, and we're not going to turn the tide without praying, you're going to find all the areas to focus your prayers. And when you focus your prayers on serious issues, it's like taking the power of a river and putting it into a turbine. It'll light up a whole city. You create that kind of energy. And we're going to show you where to focus your prayers, but we'll also show you how to walk it out in the book Indivisible, so that we can really correct our course. And I hope you get it. I said at the beginning of the program, you get Being George Washington, and you read Indivisible, and you apply those truths, you're going to be a transformed person, and you're going to have an impact piercing the darkness and become a city set on a hill. And I want you to understand the importance of being a city set on a hill. That's where the individual lights come shoulder to shoulder, heart to heart, and they walk in step, just like the enemies of truth and life and freedom are walking in lockstep. Read Joel chapter 2. Read all of Joel chapter 2. See how the enemy that's coming in judgment to destroy the prosperity of the nation, how they walk in lockstep. They don't break rank. Look at the strange bedfellows today that are assaulting the freedom and the prosperity and the blessings that made us great, that we could share with the entire world. Look what's happening. God says, however, if you return to me and you become the city set on a hill, you get back in my presence, you get back in my light, and you are going to see me make up to you for the years the locusts have eaten. That's what God wants us to be. In a few moments, we're going to talk about putting on the armor of God to pierce the darkness and overcome the enemy. And a little later, we're going to be talking to Josh Hamilton. But I want to talk to Rick Ritter a little bit more about this book he wrote, Dressed to Kill. It's about spiritual warfare. Back in a moment. I'm very, very grateful to have Josh Hamilton here. You looked over the picture here, Josh, a moment ago, and you said that picture, that particular one, was when you struck out. Is that what it was?
You can always tell when you strike out by the expression on your face. No smile was there. I look kind of frustrated.
Well, we're going to talk about what you might call a recent strikeout. It's one you weren't very happy about. Rick Renner's here with us, and you started his book, Dressed to Kill, which is about spiritual warfare. And let me just ask you, and then we're going to go to Rick for a moment, then I want to talk to you, but would you agree that, the journey you're on and the battle, that you've known from the time of addiction, maybe even before that, when you had real, let's say, challenges. Is it a spiritual battle, Josh?
It is. It is. And before I really knew what spiritual warfare was about, I mean, I was getting it tattooed on my body. I really was. From the time right before I started using drugs on through when I was using drugs. And, you know, demons and devil faces and Christ on the cross. And
that's what you actually put on your body.
That's what I have all over my body.
Rick, you wrote a great book. You know,
Thank you.
Beth Moore is a great Bible teacher. She teaches on our Life Today program. If you're not aware, Life Today comes on major networks, Discovery every morning. It's ABC Family. It's on all the inspirational networks. You can get us many times a day. And Beth Moore teaches on Wednesdays with Beth, we call it, on Life Today. And she read Dressed to Kill, and I think you said she got a light in the darkness.
Yeah, she wrote me a real sweet letter.
Really a nice letter. But Beth said to me, she said, I don't know that I've ever seen anyone handle the Greek language not only more faithfully, accurately, and more powerfully, but she said, I don't think with greater humility. She said, this is a truly brilliant, gifted man.
Well, thank you.
And you know, Josh, I believe, is in a spiritual battle, and we're in it with him. Mm-hmm. He has started reading the book, and I think you said you misplaced it, Josh, so we're going to give you another one and get your take on in it. But, you know, you talk about putting on the armor of God, because we're in a war. Paul talks about this in Ephesians 6. Glenn Beck talks about it a lot of times on here, that there are principalities and powers in the realm of darkness and deception that we're warring against. We're in this battle. And Paul said in that same context that because of this, we need to put on the whole armor of God and literally go into battle and being able to stand, keep standing. And I feel like really in every area of concern we have in our nation, we really need to be, as Paul said, good soldiers of the Lord Jesus Christ. We need to take a stand. We need to be bold. We need to be, as I said a moment ago, the city set on a hill. And by the way, the Bible says that cannot be hidden. And I have added, when I'm emphasizing that, and will not be hidden. In other words, we're not going to get back under some covering. We're not going to compromise and refuse to take a stand. Well, if we're going to fight the good fight of faith and we're going to win and put on armor, and I'll be talking to Josh about where he is so people can pray for him, and we'll all really stand with him because we love him and think a lot of him. Touch on one or two of the aspects of the armor that would probably be important to Josh and to all of us. You know,
I was thinking about Josh before the program, and I was thinking about you, because several years ago in your life, you had a big change happen in your life.
I had a defeat, a time in my life where I was so defeated I wanted to die. And I experienced incredible deliverance and moved into a fullness. And by the way, Josh, and we'll touch on this in a moment, the freedom that I experienced introduced me into a walk that took me a full year of reprogramming my thoughts with the Word of God. And let me tell you, Josh, as great as the times of prayer, and they were so special to me, the reprogramming process, I look back on, and every other experience in my life pales in comparison to that reprogramming and walking in the Spirit. And I think that's what you'll be going through. Touch on that, Rick.
Well, I was just thinking about you and about Josh and about how the battle really is in the mind for all of us. Because whoever controls your thoughts controls you. The devil knows that your mind is the central control center for your life, and whatever you think is going to determine what you feel about yourself, what you project to others. And so there's a battle for the mind, whether that's the government after your mind, or Hollywood after your mind, or someone wants your mind. And in the New Testament, the words war and warfare only appear 5 times in connection with spiritual warfare. And James, you know what? Every time it's about the mind. Every single time those words appear, it's about protecting the mind or pulling down thoughts, which is quite a battle in itself.
Yeah, tearing down strongholds.
Tearing down strongholds.
That means there's a strong grip. And
well,
that's
that word stronghold describes a castle or a prison. So if you have a stronghold in your mind, it means that there's something that's dominating your mind like a king or a tyrant, but you also feel like you're behind bars. You don't know how to get free of this thing, and there is a voice in your head that is telling you what to think, what to feel, and if you don't know what to do, you are simply a captive. And that's why I wrote that book.
I've been there, and when I reached my point of being set free, I called it a claw in my brain. I said, it's like something's gripped my brain. I can't stop thinking certain things. And I had a problem with lust. And I was totally distracted. And I had anger. I was basically out of control. The love that God had put in me wasn't flowing freely. and I had to have my mind healed.
Well, God's given us weapons, and they're clearly described in Ephesians chapter 6.